Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to try and keep this fairly light, so hopefully we'll speed our way towards the end of the day and the drinks reception and all that good stuff. In terms of an agenda, I'll do a bit of an introduction to myself, and I'll introduce the Coca-Cola company as a marketing company, as I previously mentioned. I can't really come to an event like this and not tell you a little bit about us, and it would be criminal almost of me not to do that, but I'll do it quickly. Then I'm going to talk about the analogy. I'm going to talk about the context for Coca-Cola of IoT, some of which will resonate with some of you in different ways, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're approaching it. I don't come here with a whole book full of answers, I'm afraid. I've got some things that we're trying to do, which I will share with you, some of which have been quite successful, and others we're still learning, let's put it that way. So I thought we'd start off with a bit of fun. So feel free, so some numbers, that's me obviously, and these are some numbers that relate to me and to Coca-Cola, because that's where I work. So perhaps, I don't know, does anyone want to shout out any guesses? Not age of children, but I have 2 children, so that's the 2. That's the 5, yeah. Damn, I didn't think anyone would get that. All right, let me run through a couple of them. So the top one is the number of contacts I had on LinkedIn when I wrote this presentation a couple of days ago. As I've been linking in with lots of you whilst I'm being here, that number's probably wrong. But I think it's a useful number. I did a similar presentation a year ago and it was at 700. So I think I'm accepting more requests from people I don't really know, or maybe I am rapidly expanding my network. 200, so Coca-Cola operates, we have people in over 200 countries around the world. There are only 2 countries we don't operate in. One is Cuba, and that's hopefully shortly to change, and the other is North Korea, for obvious reasons. 41, that's my age. 30 is the number of minutes I'm going to be talking. I'm just checking now what the numbers are. 94, this is an interesting one. This is according to some business research. 94% of people around the world, when asked, recognize our red and white logo. So it's kind of a scary thought, and I thought interesting. 18 months, that's how long I've been with Coca-Cola. 17 years of IT experience. 5, that's the number of Coke products I consume in a day. So just some numbers to kind of introduce me. I think it's important when I talk about IoT and why would you care what Coca-Cola is doing about it, to highlight to you, first of all, we're an old company. We've been around for 130 years. Our core product hasn't changed a great deal, apart from we've removed some ingredients, changed some formulation along the way. I'm not really supposed to talk about that. But we've innovated throughout our lifetime. So some of these innovations you'll be aware of. These are product innovations, other innovations that are less product-based, the modern concept of Santa Claus, that's a Coca-Cola thing. The Hilltop ad, which was referenced at the end of the Mad Men series, for those of you who watched it, that was groundbreaking for the diversity of the advert. First female director ever in a listed company was Coca-Cola. So there's lots of things that we've done that we can feel are innovative and we're proud of. This is the product, obviously, most of you probably think of when you think of Coca-Cola. We actually have about 3,500 different products worldwide, 20 of which are billion-dollar brands. So that's a brand that generates over $1 billion in revenue per year. And in the background, you can see some of them. And we're number 1 worldwide, which means we deliver 1.9 billion servings of beverage a day. Remember that number, because when we talk about IoT and scale and data, that's where that number becomes important. So we're through the introduction. I'm not going to give you any more marketing material about Coca-Cola. I've told you all I'm ever going to tell you about myself. Let's talk about the analogy. And in anticipation of your question, I put this in for any younger audience members out there. So these are video cassettes. And there was a time where you had to sit down at a particular time to watch a program on television, because if you didn't, your chance was then gone. There was no catch-up, there was no on-demand. And very interestingly, a war developed. And war, I should be careful about using the term war, a commercial battle is probably a better way of describing it. From a timeline perspective, 1976 was when they were launched. I didn't know, I had to actually research this. I was quite surprised. And you can see the sort of history. It took 11 years for VHS to overcome Betamax. From the research I did, it was a combination of price and length. So a VHS tape did 2 hours at lower quality than a Betamax tape, which did an hour at higher quality. And yet VHS still won with its lower price point. 17 years after winning the war, VHS became obsolete. So is this a good analogy when we think about the Internet of Things space? Well, it feels like there are competing vendors. What about the pace? 11 years, 17 years? I don't think so. So having presented you with an analogy, I'm now going to tear it down a little bit. If you look at WhatsApp, for example, which went from 0 to 900 million users in 6 years. I mean, it's just remarkable. It's almost inconceivable, and quite a few people in this room have been in industry for a number of years. That's remarkable. I mean, some IT projects don't get finished in 6 years. You know, at least none that I've ever been involved in. October 2014, really significant date. It's the 14th, I think, but I don't know that they know the exact date, but the date that the research was published, that's when the number of mobile devices in the world overtook the number of people. Okay? So there are, I think it's 7.22 billion mobile devices compared to the US Census estimate of between 7.19 and 7.2 billion people. And then we get into IoT, and there's lots and lots of research about IoT. The rough estimate, I'm assuming everyone in the room has some kind of understanding of when I talk about the Internet of Things, I'm talking about, yeah, we're all good? Yeah, good. I thought the audience would know, so I just check. Anyway, there are 10 billion-ish today, and they reckon that various research, Cisco, Gartner, it's all fairly consistent. The sort of aggregate average is that by 2020, there'll be 50 billion connected devices. So that means for me that whilst the VHS Betamax thing is a useful starting point, it's probably not a sufficient analogy to really cover the scale of the problem that we as IT leaders are facing into. And if you're not already facing into this, it's coming. And I'll explain a little bit more about that problem. So, is it just 2 formats? No, it's loads. IoT's everywhere. We heard about the car. The car where we spend a lot of our time that now has a huge amount of software running in it, and that's only going to increase. You know, the car companies are trying to work out with the likes of BP and Shell, how can the car become a payment platform? So you go into the service station, you fill up with petrol, gas, diesel, whatever, and the car pays. So you know, I mean, you don't actually go in anymore. Residential, that's my house. It's up for sale. I've just found out that the chain locked today, so I'm afraid it's too late. But just on the off chance that it hadn't, I thought I'd leave it in there. I have the British Gas, is it Nest or Hive? I always get them muddled up. I have one of their thermostats at home. So from my mobile phone, I can control my heating, which my wife was thrilled about because I accidentally set it to turn off at the wrong time, and her response to me, and she's an IT architect, by the way, but she's also a bit of a Luddite. Her response to me was, well, I much preferred it when I just had a dial that I could move. And I was like, no, this is so much better. Whether we like it or not, this stuff is happening, etc. In terms of wherever there is a thing, there'll be connectivity. So, the complexity, the scale of what's happening in the Internet of Things, Internet of Everything space, the massive pace of change that is the reality of the modern world, means that the Betamax versus VHS analogy probably doesn't work very well. And then, just because it's current, and I wanted to put a Star Wars reference in, we're not talking about BB-8, we're talking about BV-8. So, humour me. So what's the context of all of this? Why does any of this matter?